So, what I like to say in the book is if you're not relevant, you'll be ignored. And nobody likes to be ignored. And if you're not compelling, you'll be forgotten. One of the questions that are always good to ask at the right time is, what will happen or what is likely to happen if we do nothing?
Think about your prospect. Put yourself in their shoes. We always talk about, stop thinking like a seller and start thinking like a buyer. All right, so wherever you're at today in the world, I want you to really think about this question. So whether you're driving down the road to your next sales call, you're about to pick up the phone to call a prospect, maybe you're about to do a Zoom session, with the pandemic, you're not meeting in a boardroom, you're doing a Zoom session with the whole board. Or let's say that you're in the gym just starting out your day and you're wondering kind of what should I do today differently to get me to a new level? So wherever you're at, I want you to think about this question. Have you ever thought of or wondered, really wondered, what it takes to be a top 1% salesperson in your industry? You know what I mean? The salesperson who makes all of the money, who gets any promotion they want, in fact, turns down promotions they don't want, and has all the respect from the owners in the company. They lead by example. Well, my next guest is going to answer that question for you. And let me give you a small taste of this man's background. He has been an entrepreneur for almost 40 years. He started, built, and sold 2 very successful book publishing companies. You can look them up after this. After the sale of the second publishing company, he devoted the last 25 years to the art and science of relationship marketing. He has 3 books on the topic of referrals: Get More Referrals Now, Don't Keep Me a Secret, and Beyond Referrals. We're going to get into that. And as the founder of the Cates Academy, I can't pronounce anything, I'm from Arkansas, for relationship marketing, he's become widely recognized as an international expert in his ability to help businesses create exponential growth through purposeful word of mouth, strategic networking, referrals, and personal introduction. Very important in our day and age. He's now turned his attention to helping businesses and professionals develop and communicate more relevant and compelling value propositions to win more ideal clients and customers. His newest book, you're going to look this up, Radical Relevance, Sharpen Your Marketing Message, Cut Through the Noise, Win More Idea Clients. Please help me welcome to the show, Mr. Bill Cates. Bill, how are you all the way over there in Maryland?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you, Jeremy. And just in case anyone misheard you, Bill Cates, not Bill Gates. I missed it by 1 letter and several billion brain cells, probably.
Well, we are glad you are Bill Cates. We'd be having a different conversation if you were Bill Gates.
Probably true.
So, hey, I'm excited to have you on here today. And, here's what I love. I love talking about human behavior within sales, whether that's marketing or mono-to-mono sales, selling one-to-many or selling one-to-one, and how that applies to being a top salesperson in our time. So thanks for being on. And I want to dive right into your story and really give our listeners, let's say, a feel for your background and how you arrived at this point in your life where you're one of the elite authorities on sales, on, referrals and persuasion. Just briefly, can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how this really all started for you? How did you learn all these skills?
Well, gosh, we can go back to when I was about 9 years old, when I was selling furnace filters for the Cub Scouts, and the grand prize was a Schwinn bicycle. Anyone old enough to remember back then, the Schwinn was the king of all bikes, not so much anymore. But I had a mentor, actually, who taught me about it. I'll try to make it as short as possible. I was knocking on doors, cold calling, if you will. And he says, Billy Cates, would you like to do better? And I said, sure, I want to win the bike. He says, all right, when you're done with me, go across the street, talk to the D'Angelos, tell them I bought 2, tell them I sent you there, and ask them how many they want, right? So that was my first lesson in the referral process.
Okay.
And ended up actually winning the contest, winning the bike, still have the bike in the storage room.
Yeah.
And that's when I got started in sales. But I'll be honest, I drifted away from that for quite some time. Became a drummer in a rock and roll band, toured the country a little bit. I started getting into publishing business. And when I did that, that's when all the sales stuff came back.
Okay.
Because I was selling B2B, I was selling B2C, I was selling direct mail, eventually with the internet, just you name it, any type of sale I was engaged in some form or another. Eventually sold those two businesses, as you mentioned.
Sure.
And now have devoted my life to, teaching what I learned and continue to learn. Got to stay relevant, right? And
well, what I love about this book, and I've got the book here.
Nice.
What I love about your book is that it's relevant to right now. Because you see a lot of training that you'll go through, a lot of sales training and messaging that, to be frank, is just not really that relevant. They haven't been in the game for decades, and then they write books like, selling is the same as it was in 1985 or 2003, but the game has completely shifted. Today's consumers more cautious, they're more skeptical. And we're going to get into that. Your book talks a lot about how they're bombarded with all these messages. So of course, it's put up walls of defense when they hear that. And let's start with the obvious question, right? What do you mean by radical relevance? And why was this concept so important that you wrote a book specifically just about it?
Yeah, so in all the work I've done with business owners, salespeople, their sales forces, one of the biggest challenges, the two biggest challenges that we face, number one is just cutting through all the noise, right? I'm not the first person to mention that. It's been estimated the average person gets 3,000 marketing messages a day. Yeah. So no wonder, we all set up barriers to stuff that isn't relevant to us.
Sure.
The brain is automatically sifting, if that's relevant, I'll pay attention. If it's not, I'll just move on. And so we've got to find a way to be relevant, to have the right message that's going to hit the bullseye in their brain and resonate with them. And then we got to keep staying relevant with them along the whole process. And then I'd say the other challenge, one big challenge anyone in sales faces is inertia, meaning people are just doing what they're doing and they have to change to listen to your message, right?
Sure.
And sometimes they're stuck just doing what they're doing, with their head in the sand, ignoring. Sometimes they're moving forward in a direction that may not be best for them.
Sure.
And then part of that equation is the incumbent, right? There's someone else that might be serving them. And they may not be thrilled with working with them, but they don't know how to get out of that relationship.
They're stuck in the status quo.
Yeah. So they stuck. Yeah. So between, having our message, making it hard to get through, and this is on a macro side with marketing and a micro side with sales. And then the fact that people are stuck in wherever they are, it's not easy.
Well, yeah. And I think you hit it right on the head. And to break it down for salespeople listening to this, think about your prospect, put yourself in their shoes. We always talk about, stop thinking like a seller and start thinking like a buyer, right? So when you start thinking like a buyer, just imagine yourself, you wake up in the morning, you turn on the TV, commercials are trying to sell you something, right? You get on your Facebook or your Instagram, you've got Facebook ads and Instagram ads trying to sell you something. You look at, Grandma Joe just posted something. Oh, she's trying to get people to come over to her Mary Kate party. She's trying to sell you something. You get into your car, you turn on the radio, commercials try to sell you something. You go down the road, you see billboards trying to sell you something. You're exactly right. There's thousands of messages that people are seeing every single day. So they built these walls of resistance. And if it's not relevant to them, if it's not talking about specific problems that they themselves can see, they're just, it's coming in and it's completely out in a split second. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
And you know why? One of the reasons that is in my book, Radical Relevance, chapter 3 is the neuroscience of relevance. And so what we know about the brain is the brain doesn't like to spend any unnecessary energy.
Yeah.
Its job is to spend fewer calories, which is, this to my dismay, but nonetheless,
Right.
That's its job. And so anytime anything is a little confusing or irrelevant, just not for us, no, that's not me, it'll just immediately snap back to wherever it was. It just doesn't want to go there. So we are hardwired to ignore anything that isn't relevant to us.
How can, and that was a question I wrote down here that I was going to ask you. How can understanding neuroscience make a difference in how we attract and win more clients? Now, my background, my degree is in behavioral science. So I'm a little bit familiar with this. So I love people that love to talk about this subject. How can we attract and win more clients using techniques that work with human behavior rather than working against human behavior?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. So that's one example of the fact that the brain wants to use less energy. So therefore it doesn't like things that are confusing. As salespeople and as marketers, we have to be careful not to get overly clever or creative. I mean, it's good to be creative and clever, don't get me wrong, but it could, if we're not careful, get in the way of the clarity of our message and what we're trying to accomplish. So the brain will shut down to that. Another thing is the brain is scanning 6 times a second, which I think we'd agree is pretty fast. Where am I? Am I safe?
Sure.
It wants to know it's safe at all times. And it's also scanning 3 times a second, about half as much. Is there an opportunity?
Okay.
So the brain is built for action. It's built for opportunity. It loves to learn, grow, and do new things, but only when it feels safe.
Sure.
So therefore, how does that affect us? Well, we know then that when we reach out to prospects, and you mentioned this, we first want to acknowledge empathy for their problems, their challenges. We want to display a sense of empathy, knowingness for their situation, but it can't be just so generic that we're guessing.
Sure.
We have to really get a sense of what their challenges might very well be. And then we can bring in the opportunities. Then we can show ourselves as someone who might have a solution to the problems, but we have to first bring him into the story. So you may hear me use that word empathy more than once today. It's clients want to have a sense, or prospects want to have a sense of, we have a sense of knowing them a little bit, right?
Well, today's prospect doesn't want to be talked at and sold. They want to be asked and understood. And I was reading through the first chapter. You tell a story about one of your clients who achieved a 900% growth rate in 7 years. That's pretty inspirational.
Right.
Tell us a little bit more about how that actually happened, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, it's her name is Nancy McKay, and she's out of Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada. And she runs a company called McKay CEO Forums. It's peer group forums where CEOs get together, brainstorm, help each other out, support each other, right? So when I met her, she had 100 of these clients, and she was making pretty good money, but she was doing everything herself.
Right.
And she wanted to scale.
Yeah.
And so she brought me in initially to help her with the referral process to, number one, be able to attract more CEOs for more forums through referrals and introductions, and then also to attract more people to run the groups.
Okay.
More chairs to run the groups. And so we started work with that. We did a lot of stuff, a lot of scripts. We did a lot of role play demos and stuff so people could be trained up on this. And then we slowly shifted to her messaging to make it more effective through the things I teach in Radical Relevance. And so 7 years later, she has over 1,000 clients.
Sure.
And we're talking about, big dollars here. So she's doing very well. It's funny because she says, Bill, I owe it all to you. I go, Nancy, you did the work. I just gave you some ideas. No, but I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't your ideas. Okay, whatever. We have kind of a mutual admiration society.
Sure. Yeah. And that kind of leads me into the next thing I wanted to discuss with you. I noticed scattered all throughout your book, are the rules of radical relevance. I think you provide, I want to say 17. I could be misquoting that. Okay. Now we could spend probably the next 3 or 4 hours discussing each one of those, but can you tell us a little bit about maybe the top 2 or 3 rules? Like, what are they, and how can our listeners get off of this podcast today and apply those to what they're doing? Yeah.
So the first rule, you won't be surprised, is the straightest line to relevance with a prospect, with someone who doesn't know us, is an introduction from someone they do know, someone they trust. Okay. So the best way to build sales is through borrowed trust, which is the referral, the introduction.
Sure.
And I've devoted 25 years to that, and that's not going away. In fact, probably more important now than ever before for most businesses. The second rule is give your clients or customers a seat at the table. And what I mean by that is you really don't want to work up sales messaging, marketing messages, strategies, et cetera, without at least talking to some of your clients. Not all of them, of course, or customers. But I mean, I developed a product a number of years ago that I ended up throwing out 60,000 CDs and DVDs because I didn't follow that rule. I didn't talk with my potential customers for that product and did it all wrong. And it was a painful mistake, but also a great learning
Right.
that I'll never make
Sure.
again. Another one of the rules, I can't remember what number it is any message, well, it goes like this. Your customers or clients aren't mind readers. They don't know exactly what you want them to do. You've got to tell them or ask them to do it, right? So it's what we call a call to action. And if you're sending an email to a prospect or leaving a voicemail or a LinkedIn message, what is your call to action? What is your CTA?
Right.
What are you asking them to do? And is it compelling enough? Is it relevant so they're going to pay attention? And then is it going to help them solve a problem? And is it click here, do this, respond here? But don't ever assume they will know what that is. I'll give you one more. One more is we've got to be very mindful of all the times we say we and our and I and us, and be more mindful of when we say you and your. And, you know, I always monitor my
Tell us
emails.
why that is. I think you hit on an important principle, but I want our listeners to understand why that is.
Well, there's a few reasons. One reason is because they're more interested in themselves than they are in us.
Of course.
Especially if they don't know us at all.
Mm-hmm.
Once they know us, like us, care about us, or maybe want to do business, well, maybe they'll care a little bit more about that, right? But what we want to do is we want to strike that connection of empathy. So it's like this. Think of the original Star Wars movie, with Luke Skywalker and stuff. It's a classic hero's journey. There's a few models of storytelling, and that's one of them, the hero's journey. So the hero, Luke Skywalker, runs into the villain, a challenge, right? Darth Vader, but finds a guide. Yoda, the guide was, and they together fight the villain. So what we want to make sure is that we, all our messaging and our attitude is we're showing our prospects and customers or clients that they are the hero.
Yeah.
And we are applying for the job to be the guide. We are not the hero. If you look at most websites, most LinkedIn profiles for salespeople, for business owners, you name it, it's all about me, we, I'm the hero. I've won this award. I've won that award. And that credibility building is important.
Sure.
You just don't want to do it too soon.
In the conversation, you're more focused on them, and what they're looking for, rather than focused on you and your own.
And pull them into the story a little bit. So on my LinkedIn profile, and I encourage everyone to join me at LinkedIn, you can hit Bill Cates. Hopefully I'll come up first or close to it. And so you'll look at my about section. It says, enough about me, let's talk about you.
Yeah.
And then I describe a little bit about who I serve. You're probably looking for this, or perhaps you're looking for that. And I show some empathy for their situation. And then I start to create credential and apply for the job as the guy.
Yeah, and that leads right into the next question. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was reading through your book. You talk a lot about building a value proposition. Now, that's a big word in sales. Everybody uses that, and having your marketing around problems that you solve. Now, most companies, most salespeople, because when we go and train them on this, we call it more of a personalized intro, but value proposition, very similar, teach that their value prop is really about the solution, not the problem. Tell us why it should be around problems that you solve rather than your solution.
Because that's what people care about. That's what the brain is looking for. Yes, it does want a solution. It does want the problem to go away.
Yeah.
It also wants to take advantage of opportunities where there may not even be a problem. And they don't want to, fear of missing out, right?
Yeah.
And so, but they have to identify with it first. And so, it's classic. It's, yes, we understand you have this problem, this issue, or a lot of folks in your business have this issue. Is that true for you? How does it show up for you?
Sure.
Right. Go deep with that and then start to bring in, well, there may be a way to take care of that. Right.
No, I totally agree. I think that the top salespeople in any industry, it doesn't matter what you're selling, are always the best at what we call problem finding. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's even a step further than problem solving. You always got to be a great problem solver, but the problem is you can't solve anything unless they purchase from you. In our day and age, you have to be better at problem finding. And just like you said, that's learning how to ask the right questions at the right time in the conversation that helps your potential customer uncover problems in their own mind that they didn't even think they had. So your questioning ability helps them find out those problems in their own mind that lead them to trust you, to be able to be open to what you're offering in your solution. I love that part of your book. Most people miss that for sure.
Well, the ideal scenario, in a perfect world, everybody would be wearing their problems on their sleeve, right? It would be,
Right.
they have what my a friend of mine, Michael Scott, who I quote in the book, talks about an obvious critical problem, blatant and critical, right? They know they have it. It's painful. They got to solve it. There's a deadline.
Prospects, if that.
Right. And there are some of those people out there, and we want to orient our business towards those people that have the blatant, obvious critical problems. But that doesn't fit every single business. So I know you have a lot of folks in financial services, and
Sure.
Like you said, sometimes they don't realize that there's a problem, a ticking time bomb, until you ask some questions, until they become enlightened in that situation. Yeah. And that's what Michael calls missionary selling. And I like that because you are on a mission. You're on a mission to help people make educated decisions that are in their best interest. To me, that's what selling is. Helping people make educated decisions that are in their best interest. But we can't do that unless we have context. Sure. So radical relevance, asking the questions you're talking about, it's all about creating the context that allows us to then bring the most effective.
Talk a little bit more about that context, because in chapter 20, you kind of give a great model for determining what problems we should try to solve for our clients and perhaps even build our business around that. Can you describe that model for sales?
Yeah, and it's actually what I just said. It is that so some problems are blatant and critical. And what we mean by that is they know they have it, and then there's a deadline, they're bleeding money, whatever.
Sure.
A lot of problems are what Michael calls aspirational. So it would be nice to solve,
right?
But when I get around to it. And so what we want to be looking for and helping to create are these blatant critical problems, because that's when people will spend time, energy, dollars, right? If they don't know they have it, well, they won't spend anything on it. If they view it as aspirational, right? I'll get around to it. They don't have enough life insurance. And if they died today, their family would be decimated because of that. Yeah. But they're going to get around to it someday.
Sure.
Right?
So you help them get around to it very quickly rather than down the road.
By showing the critical nature of the problem. And that becomes quite an accomplished skill when you can start to not only uncover the problems and ask good questions, but to move them to from aspirational to critical. And if you can't get someone to see something, acknowledge, yes, I have this problem, this is a challenge, and yes, it's important for me to solve sooner than later, then you're probably not going to make a sale.
Yeah. Well, there's no urgency. There's no urgency.
It's about creating urgency.
And we have to look at salespeople, that's our responsibility, because if we can't help our prospects find problems that they didn't even know they have and help solve them, well, they stay in the status quo and nothing ever changes for them. Their problems continually get worse. They can lead to major consequences. So it's up to us as professional salespeople to help them find and solve those problems. And, our pet peeve here is when salespeople are like, our prospects are just not motivated, or they just don't have the money, and they blame the prospect, but they don't realize that it's really their responsibility. Their lack of communication skills, not knowing what questions to ask, how to ask them, how to use the right tonality, that's triggering their prospects to go the other way when they might really want you to solve their problems. And I think that's a big key there.
Yeah, we've got to own the result. And look, it's not always our fault. I mean, some people just are so stuck in inertia or they got other things going on that they just can't get their head around what we're trying to do. But we still have to realize that we have to own the result and figure out what could I have done better, said better. Yeah. So for instance, when you send an email to a prospect, maybe even when you've been introduced to, which is a higher level, right? And they don't respond, well, maybe your message wasn't relevant and or compelling enough to get them to respond.
Probably too long.
It could be too long. It could address the wrong issues.
Yeah.
We don't know for sure. And it's not definite because they may have other stuff on their world going on and have nothing to do with us, but we have to keep learning and owning the result. And so, what I like to say in the book is if you're not relevant, you'll be ignored, and nobody likes to be ignored. And if you're not compelling, you'll be forgotten. So it's this constant effort and awareness and talent that we develop to be relevant and compelling along the way. And those are the best salespeople. Those are the best business development folks that are able to find those problems, bring them to light in a way that's not all negative and not all obvious that I'm just trying to take the knife and stick it in. That's the old selling, right? Find the pain, take the knife, stick it in, turn it. No, it's not about that.
Sure.
It's a genuine conversation to help them be aware and make the best decisions.
100%. And they become open to you. They want to engage you. Now, I know you talk a lot about the concept of relevance. We've talked a little bit about it, but you make a distinction between strategic relevance and tactical relevance.
Right. So
what are the main differences in those?
Yeah, strategic relevance are the big decisions, like your target market. Now, if you're a salesperson that works for a larger company, that company may have already decided the target market, or it's possible you have some freedom within your company, in your situation, to select the target market. So, for instance, I've worked with a lot of printing salespeople in the past, and I remember one firm up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, they had 12 salespeople, each picked their own target market. And that way the company was exposed to 12 different target markets. I worked with a lot of financial advisors, and there's a lot of power in them picking a market. Employees in a large company, business owners in a specific industry or university. So it's the target market. And then the bullseye. The bullseye is who in that market is your best client. We call it right fit client, but who do you serve the best? Who do you want to track more of? Does your value proposition automatically resonate with these folks? They're usually more profitable customers as well. Sure. So the bullseye, and yes, you can have more than one bullseye in a particular market. And then how you talk about what differentiates you. What are some of the differentiating factors?
Sure.
So that's the strategic. And then the tactical is how all those things play out. So for instance, if you target a specific industry and then you know some of the challenges, problems in that industry, and then you look up that person's LinkedIn profile and maybe their bio on their website, and you pick a few things there, and then you start to mold a message that you know based on what you've learned about them and what you know is going on in the industry. That's tactical.
Yeah, so you're crafting that message directly to their space, their industry, their problems, their situations, which is going to make it far more relevant in their mind, not generic.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
And how we talk about what makes us different. Once we discover some of the differentiating factors in our business and then able to tie those to specific benefits for our prospects or clients or customers, that's strategic. But then how we actually communicate that is tactical.
Sure.
So I'll give you a couple of examples of how people communicate their differentiation. One very simple one is just to quote your clients, your customers, and say, what my clients tell me or what my customers tell me that's different about what we do is this. And so you can brag on yourself a little bit, but it's your customers that are saying it. And so that's a simple way to talk about differentiation. I also have a formula in the book that I learned from Karen Kopp, who wrote a book called Biz Dev Done Right. And her formula is anyone can, only we can, for example. So anyone can talk to you about financial products and services.
Sure.
But there are very few that have the understanding and the concentration in business owners in your industry that allows us to anticipate problems and help you maximize opportunities. For example, we're working with this one company, right? So it's a way to separate yourself. She calls it the differentiation gap creator. And so
it's third-party validation from other clients, other companies. You're not saying that you do this. They're saying, here's the results we're getting from this.
And the four examples are that's the biggest part with value prop. We call it a value positioning statement, elevator pitch. I don't care what you call it. When you have these short, succinct ways to talk about your value that everybody needs, what's a short, succinct way to talk about what makes you just a little bit different, a little bit distinct? Now, that difference may just be an interest generator. It may not be the thing that helps you win the sale, or it may be.
Well, it's enough to get them to want to engage and wanting to have the conversation. Right. Value proposition is not really not meant to sell them. It's just get them curious enough to want to engage with you to find out what you're doing. I love how radical relevance in your book goes from principles to strategies and then to tactics. I find so many books, especially on sales, don't have a lot of tactics. It's more like just principles. And you provide a lot of great tactics. One of the tactical pieces is what you call your value positioning statement. We talked a little bit about that. Can you share the formula for our listeners to, I think it's in chapter 10 of your book, on how to craft their own value positioning statement? I think that'd be really helpful.
What I recommend is people don't, if someone says, what do you do? Or you're introducing yourself to someone of what you do, be it person on the phone, Zoom, email, whatever it is. Don't lead with your title. I'm a financial advisor. I'm a regional sales manager with,
because what does that mean to them?
It may mean nothing, and it could actually have negative connotations, depending on what their past experience has been. So what I like to lead with is I either say my expertise or I specialize. And you could say we instead of I, however you want to do it. But I specialize or my expertise is in. And the next step is I work with, this defines the market, who want to. And whoever you work with, whatever they want, those are the benefits. And so that's a way to craft a value positioning statement in really just a couple of sentences that actually hits the benefits and can hit the problems too, if you do it right. And then for example, again, just like the differentiation gap formula, you want to have a for example, because it brings the other parts to life. For example, my expertise is in client acquisition. I work with salespeople and small business owners who want to acquire more ideal clients for their business without spending any more money on marketing. For example, I have this one company that was able to actually fire their call center that cost them $4,000 a year, develop a referral culture within the company, and 2 years later, they had their best sales year yet.
So you're basically telling them how what you do helps other people solve problems.
That's it. And you get a lot in there in a very quick little formula.
Well, I like that, and we, it's the same thing in our sales training organization. When companies or salespeople ask us what we do, we basically tell them how what we do helps other people. Because just like you said, if we said, well, I'm a financial advisor, or I'm a regional sales manager, it could cause a negative reaction because maybe they've had a negative experience with that. Or what it also does is what's the word? It commoditizes you. So if you say, I'm a realtor, somebody says, what do you do? Oh, I sell real estate. Well, they just put you in their mind with 30 other people they know that sell real estate. And you're no different than any of them right now. You become commoditized, okay? So for you to step outside of that box, you basically have to tell them how what you do helps other people. What we say is, clients typically come to us when they're frustrated by losing sales to low-cost competitors. They're worried about the high of attrition of always having to replace salespeople because they can't give them the right skills, and sometimes just frustrated by not hitting their sales targets consistently. Now we'll label 3 or 4 problems like that, and most people, when they hear that, like, oh yeah, that's me. That's my company, or at least they know about that problem. We're not focused on the solution yet. We're focused on problems that catch their attention, that want them to cause them to want to engage. And that's why I love your book that really talks about that. Very few people have a value proposition that focuses on problems. It's mainly focused on the dumb solution, and it just backfires. Now, I want to ask you this, because I know you're about to run out of time. In addition to your book's focus on creating messaging that's obviously radically relevant, you also talk about messaging that is critically compelling, meaning a message that drives people to actually take action, build urgency. Right. I guess for our listeners, what are the keys to getting someone to act on requests and recommendations? What's the biggest key to that?
Well, there's a few. We touched on them a little bit, and when we can help someone show a problem is critical. So that will create urgency and will create action. A couple other ways. Sometimes people don't act because they lack clarity. And what I mean by that is they lack clarity in how to work with you, what it would look like.
Yeah.
They could lack clarity on what your process is.
Okay.
They could lack clarity on what actually the change, the transformation will be
Sure.
based on what you sell. So it comes from the lack of clarity. So remember, we talked a little bit about clarity is what the brain loves. It craves certainty and clarity.
Sure.
And so one of the things we want to do is help people get clear on where they are in their business relative to what we sell. Okay. We want them to get clear on what
do you mean by that? Like what their present situation is?
What their present situation, what the context is. Sometimes they're very aware and sometimes they're not, right? It's the great questions we ask that'll help create that. And then what does that transformation look like? You know, from here to there, what does the there look like for them, and help them get clear. And when they get a sense of that and they can see it in their mind's eye, sure. It becomes more real, it becomes more attainable.
Right.
And then we're clear on how to work with us. And so all of that is a way to help people move and take action. Because again, if people are not following up on your recommendations, if they're not, it might not be relevant, it might not be compelling, or it may not be clear.
Yeah.
So that's one way. Let's see. I had another one in my head, and it escaped me.
Well, I love that. And I'll jump in. I'll jump in while you're thinking about it. It's it's so true. You're finding out their present situation, but more importantly, they are. Your questioning helps them figure out what their situation really is, right?
And I just remember what I was going to say. One of the questions that are always good to ask at the right time is, what will happen, or what is likely to happen if we do nothing?
That's
if you do nothing, question. If we do nothing.
I love that.
I tend to like to say we rather than you, because if I said to you, Jeremy, what's going to happen if you do nothing?
Yeah.
It almost feels accusatory. It almost feels, I don't know, there's a harshness to that. But if I say, Jeremy, what will happen if we do nothing? Yeah. It just softens it up a little bit, because I'm in this with you.
Okay. You're more neutral. You're
collaborating, and it's sincere. I mean,
I love that.
These are not just sales techniques you whip out on someone. You got to be sincere about this.
Yeah. So another version of that, we call those consequence questions, would be, what would be some possible ramifications if we don't do anything about solving this?
Right.
Just another wording that I love. Hey, I love that question. I want everybody, when you listen to that, write down the question Bill just put there. We label that as kind of a consequence question, and start asking that, throughout. It's not something you're going to ask in the first 30 seconds. That's going to be more towards the middle of that sales conversation, more towards the end, where you help them realize the consequences if they don't do anything about solving it, right? What are the consequences? They're basically going to be in the status quo. You don't want to tell them that. You want them to tell themselves that. Far more persuasive.
Oh yeah. The more you can get from them, the better.
Yeah.
Now, if they're not sure, you can enter into the conversation. It can be a discussion. Yeah. You may know another consequence they might experience that they haven't thought about.
Have you considered?
But yeah, the more you can get from them, the better.
Oh, 100%. Hey, so I can't thank you for being on here. This is really relevant for our day, right? I mean, especially with everything that's going on with, the economy contracting, the pandemic, everything. We have to be relevant if you want to be the top in sales in your organization, your company, if you want to be the business that, that not just survives all of this, but really thrives throughout it. So how can our listeners learn more about you, Bill, about Radical Relevance, and be able to obtain one or more of copies of your book? Like, what's the next step for them? Where do they go from here? Because this, we give them some great information here, but where do they go to take it really to the next level where they can really start making a lot of money, more sales from that?
Yeah. Good. Well, I'll give you 3 links real quick. And the first one is to learn more about the book, Radical Relevance. I mean, you can go to Amazon or radicalrelevancebook.com, radicalrelevancebook.com.
Yeah.
And it's audio, it's Kindle, it's paperback, it's hardcover, all that. And then some gifts. I have a guide that's a nice blend of some of the material and things I've been teaching around referrals for a long time, plus the new material in Radical Relevance. And that's exponentialgrowthguide.com, exponentialgrowthguide.com. Who doesn't want exponential growth? And then on our website, a lot of free resources for people to get to know what we do. And that's at referralcoach.com. referralcoach.com/resources.
Referralcoach.com/resources. Okay, we'll make sure to post all of those on for everybody. But I want you to, like, when you hear this today, take action. Be relevant. Because if you're not relevant with all the marketing messages and the sales messages going out with your prospects you're trying to communicate with every day, you are dead in the water. That doesn't have to be you. You learn how to be relevant, you will completely change your situation financially for you, your family, the company you represent. A lot of great blessings can come your way because you get to help people solve problems. You get to help them get out of the status quo. Bill, thanks for being on today.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you.
Now, if you're serious about joining the top 1%, I mean the top 1%, and you want to experience more training content just like this, click the links right over there. Right over there, they're exactly what you need to see next. You see, I release new episodes featuring top salespeople and sales authorities, multiple six-figure, high six-figure, even seven-figure earners every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday every single week at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you're new here, do yourself a favor and smash that subscribe button right below, and join our new Facebook group, Sales Revolution. You see, it's free, and there's a link in the description below just for you. We put it there for you. Finally, I make posts on Facebook and Instagram each and every day with more tips and training, so be sure and follow me and turn on your notifications. So make a comment in the first 7 minutes to any of my latest posts, share this episode, and there's a very real chance that you're gonna win some killer prizes. And here's the thing, don't sit on the sidelines. Don't be like everyone else. Get into the game. Join the sales revolution. Stay active, get involved, learn the right skills, and we will show you how to take your life and income to a level that most only dream about. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.